Subclassing just hit ESO, which got me thinking about creating the ultimate Ice Mage build. Now, obviously, Warden's Winter's Revenge skill line is a must-have, but there are actually some really interesting class options outside of the Warden that can be combined together, which is exactly what I came up with here, and the results were pretty insane. This ultimate Ice Mage build can easily solo world bosses and world events like harrowstorms, dungeon bosses, and even some trials bosses thanks to its powerful combination of frost damage, automatic shields, and passive healing. But this is far and away my favorite build so far using ESO's new subclassing feature, and I can't wait to share it with all of you in this video, so let's jump right into it. Alright everybody, here we are back on another subclassing build for the Elder Scrolls Online, this time looking at my version of the Ultimate Ice Mage setup. This is going to be obviously combining a lot of frost skills, both damage and buffs, a lot of damage over time in a surprisingly powerful build for soloing primarily, though you could also use this in group content with a few tweaks. So let's go ahead and jump right into things. Checking out the buff stats first. So here you can see some of those skill lines showcased, but just looking at the stat sheet overall, about 30k max magicka, 25k max health, 14k max stamina. Pretty good recovery there. Magicka recovery obviously is the focus. We got about 4k weapon and spell damage. That will go up quite a bit in combat. We also have very solid critical chance, good penetration as well. That's going to be buffed a little bit with some of our additional abilities. So about 10k physical and spell penetration at base, plus we're using Major Breach. So it's going to be really nice for solo content. And our armor does go up as well on the build. So we can check that out. About 22k spell resistance, 18k physical resistance. Keep in mind, we have a lot more defensive options on this build, including damage shields that are going to make this feel a lot more tanky. Now, in terms of attributes, you'll be putting 64 points into Magicka. This is a Magicka-focused build. We'll be running the Thief Mundus for the extra crit chance. And then in terms of food, you do want Magicka, Magicka Recovery, and Health. Those are your three primary stats. If you use this one, Clockwork Citrus Fillet, you can also get some extra health recovery, which is also nice for soloing. If you'd like to save some gold, Witch Mother's Potent Brew is going to be a nice option for that as well. Now, in terms of other consumables, potions, for example, you can use Tri-Stat potions for this version of the build, or even just basic Magicka potions. I set this one up so that you have all of your major buffs that you need. For a more advanced version that I'll show you in a little bit, we'll be using Spell Power potions for that one. So some different options there. Finally, in terms of the raise for solo content, Khajiit is going to win out because we have such high crit chance already, even more in execute range thanks to our subclassing passives, that the extra 12% crit damage is going to be super nice on this one. So yeah, that's what I recommend there. You also get more stats, you get more recoveries. So yeah, Khajiit, very good for this. Though any damaging race, honestly, as long as they have some Magicka stats, for example, High Elf, Dark Elf, those would be really nice options as well. But yeah, I think that's the basic setup, so let's talk about the gear sets next. Jumping right into our cold or our frost-based set, that's going to be Frostbite. This is an overland set, so it's not too difficult to pick up, or you could purchase this from guild traders as well, as it is tradable. But yeah, pretty good stats overall. We got weapon and spell damage, crit chance, weapon and spell damage again, and then for the 5-piece bonus, increases your damage done with frost abilities by 8%. Literally every skill, I think every skill that we're using deals frost damage for this build. So that's going to be a really nice bonus there. We're also dealing a lot of chilled, a lot of minor brittle with the particular skill lines that we've picked. So we do get those additional bonuses as well for the most part. So yeah, we're going to run that as a staff. And in this case, I'm using the ice staff, obviously for the ice theme, but also for some pretty cool bonus effects that frost staffs give you. Precise is the trait here. You can use an absorb magic enchant. You can use a frost enchant if you want. That's going to be 2 pieces of frostbite, and then just the waste is going to be our 3rd piece, and then number 4 and 5 that'll be on the jewelry. For the jewelry, you do want bloodthirsty for a little bit more damage. If you have the transmute stones for that, and then definitely weapon and spell damage for the glyph. For our second 5-piece, I did try out a few different things in terms of like cold damage that would be pretty easy to obtain. One of those is another overland set, Yskamor's Birthright. This comes from the base game, so it's actually very easy to pick up. This one gives you nice offensive bonuses and then 400 weapon and spell damage to your frost damage abilities. That one is pretty good, but the set that I actually landed on for the second 5-piece set was Order's Wrath. That's because this one is giving us a lot more crit chance and especially crit damage, which works really well with a frost-based build. As you can see, all the crit chance bonuses on here. It even has 2 5-piece bonuses. And this is craftable, which is really nice for solo builds, especially because you can mix in like a couple of heavy pieces. If you want more armor, you can mix in some medium pieces for more crit damage. So yeah, we're going to be using Order's Wrath, 5 pieces on the body. We've got, let me start with a heavy piece actually. So heavy chest, light shoulders, light gloves, medium legs, and light boots. Again, that's Order's Wrath, the crafted set, Max Magicka Divines for your traits on all of those. And you can see that leaves us with 1 body piece left over, that being the head here. We're going to use 1 piece of Ice Heart just to fit the ice theme and, of course, give us that nice 1-piece crit chance bonus. This is now the same as Slimecraw in Update 46, so if you have Slimecraw, that's completely fine too. Really, anything with crit chance is good. But you probably noticed that I'm not running the full monster set. Why is that? Well, it's because I am running a mythic for the solo version of this build, that being the Ring of the Pale Order, which is extremely good on this build, you guys. With the amount of dots that we have running, both skill bars, the front and back bar, have multiple dot effects going. This is really the secret to make this build unkillable. You have that 20% of damage you deal restored to you as health. Obviously, this is going to be mostly for soloing, but if you have access to it, it's highly, highly recommended. It makes soloing super easy mode on this particular build, and you'll want the weapon and spell damage glyph there, as well as the bloodthirsty trait. Now, if you don't want to run the mythic or you don't have access to this one, I would just simply put another frostbite ring here in place of the Pale Order ring, and then you could run your frosty monster set. You could run Head and Shoulders with Ice Heart, and that would be pretty decent too in terms of survivability, because then you'd get the extra damage shield plus even more frost damage, so that would be nice as well. If any of this seems confusing to you, don't forget we do have a written guide with all the different options written out, so you can check that out as well. There'll be a link for that down below. And last but not least, I almost forgot about our back bar staff, which is going to be pretty open. Right now I have the Maelstrom Ice Staff. The main thing you want here is an Ice Staff for more frost damage, and then infused as the trait with the weapon and spell damage enchant. That's just going to give you the best overall stats. But yeah, that's the entire setup, front bar, back bar, weapons included. Like I said, check out the written guide if you want to see a more detailed breakdown. I'll have links as well on how to get all of these gear sets. But that brings us to the really fun part of the build, which is subclassing. And that is, what classes did I use to make this ultimate Ice Mage build? Well, a surprise here, I actually started as a Arcanist. Now, the main reason for that is the skill here from the Herald of the Tome skill line called Tentacular Dread. This is something that I was talking about in my Discord recently. We were looking at what skills could we run that were all frost damage. And this came up as a really good option. Not only does it deal frost damage, right? It's AoE damage in front of you, roots enemies in place, but it has this really great debuff, 5% increased damage to Abyssal Ink. Now, I'll talk more about this in a minute, but basically, if you're also building up Crux, you get 2% bonus damage, increased damage for each Crux spent. So you can build up 3 Crux total, you can cast this, and then you get the 6% plus the 5%, basically 11% increased damage, and that's all the damage that you do, right? Every other single ability, including this one, is dealing an additional 11% damage against those targets. So that is huge, you guys. I can't stress enough how good that is. And the more damage you do, the higher that scales. So yeah, that is one of the main reasons why we're doing Arcanist, and Arcanist as the main class in this case, because that's going to give us more ways to build up Crux. With Tentacular Dread, it's different than Cephaliarch's Flail. This does not build Crux. This is a spender skill rather than a builder skill. So you'll need other ways to build Crux. We don't have any of the Arcanist skill lines other than this one, so we're going to be using some different ways to build Crux. But again, the best way to do that is to be an Arcanist as your main class. Now, do you have to be Arcanist? No, you're just not going to get the extra 6% damage done. So if you want to be a different class, something like a Warden, for example, that's totally fine. And this will still work, just Arcanist is a little bit more optimized and a little bit more easy to gain that crux back quicker. But other than that, we're running Treaties for the major sorcery and brutality. It's our main damage buff. We're running Fulminating Rune. This deals magic damage, but it has a frost damage component to it. And then also the passives are just really good. 7% crit damage and healing. 284 weapon and spell damage. Bonus to status effects, that's really helpful on an ice build. And some passive penetration, really great for solo. So yeah, Herald of the Tome, really nice. Now we're combining that with the Winter's Embrace skill line. This is probably no surprise to you. First off, we have a great armor buff in Ice Fortress. We also get minor protection there with Major Resolve. Winter's Revenge is a very nice frost-based damage over time. We've got even more frost damage with Arctic Blast. This one stuns enemies. It can also be used as a burst heal, though it's a little bit unreliable because you cannot be close to enemies when using this. But if you're trying to run away or avoid maybe some mechanics in solo play, it will work for a pretty nice burst heal. Northern Storm we're going to be using as a ice-based ultimate. Really nice major protection buff there for a long duration. And then, of course, the passives are pretty much, I would say, the best for an ice mage. Frost focus build, you get that bonus to the chilled status effect, both percent chance and increasing its damage. You get extra armor. Icy Aura did change. This is now applying major maim to targets for 3 seconds, which isn't bad for soloing either. But then the big one here is Piercing Cold. 15% bonus frost damage. This is pretty much a must-have skill line for an Ice Mage build such as this. What's your third skill line? Well, for me, it's going to be Gravelord and the 2 main abilities here, which are Frost damage. That's going to be Unnerving Boneyard. This is a damage over time that's really great for solo gameplay because it's AoE Major Breach. That means all enemies in the area are going to take more damage, and even more in this case because of minor vulnerability. We are using Glacial Colossus as a front bar ultimate in this case, even more frost damage. With a nice stun, basically an on-demand stun and major vulnerability as well. So this is going to be more like your offensive ultimate, and then Northern Storm would be like a defensive slash kind of offensive ultimate if you want. But of course, the passives here are really good as well. Death Knell, amazing, because you're getting 20% bonus crit chance against low health enemies. Dismember, you're getting even more penetration when these skills are active. And then Rapid Rot, great for this build because we have mostly damage over time effects, so that's a 10% bonus there. So that's the breakdown in terms of the subclasses and skill lines. No, you don't have to do it exactly like this. This is just what works for me, basically. Now, in terms of the loadout here on the front bar, we're going to start with Tentacular Dread. We talked about that. This is a 20-second debuff, and it's not a spammable ability. So in this case, you want to make sure it's built up to 3 crux, and then cast it, and you only have to do that every 20 seconds to keep that buff going. Yes, you can cast it without the crux, and you'll still get like the nice immobilize, which is good for rooting enemies. But yeah, for the most part, you should be saving this every 20 seconds for the debuff. Then we have Arctic Blast from the Warden. This is going to be a nice stun, frost damage effect that does heal you if you have a need in emergencies. Then we're running Unnerving Boneyard. Basically cast this on cooldown for the Major Breach and the Minor Vulnerability. Also to keep your Necromancer passives active. A couple of non-class skills that are really important. Contingency comes from Scribing. This is a Mage's Guild skill. We'll look at the scripts in a little bit more detail in a minute, but basically this turns into an AoE Frost spammable that also gives us Crux, that also gives us Minor Force. It's basically giving us the one thing that we needed on this build, which was a Frost-based spammable. There's other options. You could do any of the Soul Magic skills. I believe those have Frost damage scripts as well. But Contingency is just a little bit better. It is AoE, and the main thing that is different about this is you can get Minor Force, which we're not going to have any other way on this build. But speaking of Mage's Guild, we also have Inner Light, just for some bonus max magicka, as well as passive Major Savagery and Prophecy. That's going to free up your potions on this version of the build, which is pretty handy. And then front bar ultimate, we're running Glacial Colossus. This has a slightly lower cost, so you might be able to run this at the very end of a fight. It's going to help you deal a little bit more damage if you don't need major protection from the Northern Storm. Then on our back bar, we have Blockade of Frost. This comes from the Destruction Staff skill line. That's basically Elemental Blockade. It's the longer morph that has a longer duration, just makes it a little bit easier to manage. We are pairing that, of course, with Winter's Revenge. Very powerful frost-based damage over time from the Warden. Does even more damage when we have the Destruction Staff equipped, which we do, obviously, and a higher chance to apply a chilled status effect. Then we've got Fulminating Rune from the Arcanist. That is essentially another damage over time. This one lasts longer, but you can recast it early if you want, because every 6 seconds you get the bonus frost damage. Just our 2 buffs here. Ice Fortress, obviously, we need a major resolve buff. We also get minor protection. Recuperative Treaties from Herald of the Tome is our main offensive buff. That's giving us major brutality and sorcery. Restoring magic and stamina and generating 1 crux if we have none. And then our back bar ultimate, Northern Storm. This one costs a little bit more, but it is like a defensive ultimate as well, with a nice mixture of damage and then major protection, reducing your damage taken. All right, quick rotation just so you can see how this works. I've tried to make it as simple as possible. For you guys, basically, you're going to start with your back bar buffs. Ice Fortress, Treaties, and then you have 3 back bar dots. Really simple. You've got Wall, you've got Winter's Revenge, and then Rune. That's the back bar, really simple. On the front bar, you have basically 3 different effects that you want to work on. You have Gravelord, Unnerving Boneyard, that's your major breach. You have Arctic Blast for more frost damage and a stun. And then you have Contingency with that Crux script that's going to build you up to 3 Crux. Once you're at 3 Crux, you can cast Tentacular Dread to get that 20% debuff, and then bar swap back. Okay, so that's the long version. Let's do it a little bit quicker now. So buffs. In the back bar, I want to make sure Boneyard is down. Arctic Blast. Contingency until we get to 3 Crux, and you can see Tentacular Dread will light up green. And then you can cast that for the full debuff. Okay, now another nice thing that I like to do is when I'm on the front bar, in between these abilities is Heavy Attack. One thing you'll notice when I heavy attack with the staff, if you look at my health bar, I am getting a free damage shield with each heavy attack. So that's going to be really nice for soloing as well, because each of those casts is basically improving my survivability. And it's a pretty big shield. It's about 10k damage shield each time we heavy attack, and it's completely free, right? And it's also building up our magicka. Now, obviously, use your ultimate whenever that's ready. I forgot to mention that. On the back bar, you only need to cast your armor and your recuperative treaties once every 2 rotations or so. And then, yeah, just build up your crux. Fire off Dread when it's ready. And I'll go ahead and finish this off. By the way, that passive for Destruction Staff, in case you were curious, it's the Tri-Focus passive here. Fully charged Ice Staff heavy attacks grant you damage shield, scaling off your max health, but it also works with champion points. So yeah, heavy attacking, once you get used to that rotation in between your front bar skills, not only is it giving you a lot of magicka sustain, because as you can see with these abilities, they're pretty magicka draining. A lot of them are high cost, so heavy attacking in between those is going to be really helpful. Okay, I promised I would go over the scribing part of this too, just to make it really clear. Ulfsild's Contingency is the Mage's Guild scribe skill. This one is really good. You can do the frost damage script, obviously, which fits the frost theme of this build. You can do class mastery, which if you're an Arcanist, it's creating crux every time you use the ability, and then the really good option here is Minor Force. We're not able to get that any other way. You could run Barb Trap, but that's an extra skill slot that we didn't really have. These are the scripts that I'm using on Contingency to get that chilled effect to fit the ice theme build. Really quick, one more option too, if you want a little bit more damage and a slightly easier rotation, is you can use Banner Bearer. Banner has all of these different damage effects basically that you can get when you stand in it. This one gives you damage over time. This one gives you magical damage, area of effect, direct damage. Now you would think that damage over time was the best, but I found in testing all 3 of these that they're actually pretty similar. And if you use the Flame Banner, it defeats the look of the Ice Mage build, but the Magic Banner looks blue, has a blue effect, so it fits in there, and it gives you a buff to all magical damage. Magical being Frost, Shock, Ice, and Fire. So you can see that fire, and magic. So that's an easy way to buff that damage. And then class mastery, like I said, for a little bit of bonus crux generation. You'll be able to cast Tentacular Dread more often with the full effect. And then something like heroism. So you don't have to do it like this, just know that's an option. And if I were to use banner on this build, I would just replace Inner Light on the front bar, and then I would replace recuperative on the back bar, and that's how I would run that. And this is how it looks. All right, let's check out the champion points next. As usual, you can find these listed in the written guide. I'll have 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP versions of this loadout. For this video, I'll just go over the slotted stars here in the green tree, starting with Steed's Blessing, followed up by Master Gatherer, Gifted Rider, Warmount. Over in the blue tree, we've got Binding Aura for AoE damage, Thaumaturge for damage over time, Fighting Finesse for crit damage and healing, and then Wrathful Strikes for a bit of extra offensive damage. Finally, in the red tree, we've got the usual Rejuvenation, Fortified, Boundless Vitality. Fourth slotted star is really up to you. If you like the defensive way this build plays, then I would go with Bastion here just to increase the shield. That does affect the shield that you get from heavy attacks on the Ice Staff. That'll affect the shield from Ice Heart if you happen to use both pieces of that monster set. If you don't need the damage shield, then more sustain would definitely be nice, and I would slot Siphoning Spells instead. Then for the outfit style, if you're curious what this is actually a costume. This is the Queen's Eye Spy Master, and then we're using the Frostcaster staff. All right, everybody, with that said, that's going to wrap up this video for the solo subclassing Frost Mage build for the Elder Scrolls Online. Hope you all found this useful and it gave you some ideas to try out on your own for subclassing. Of course, if you found this video helpful, do me a huge favor and crush that like button so that YouTube knows to share this video with others. That is much appreciated. Check out the links down below for the written guide and even more subclassing builds. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.